thanks. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we're talking about the Scooby-inspired video game, Murder is Game Over, The Blackington Curse. Before we begin, I will have everyone introduce themselves, and Matthew, we'll start with you.
My name is Matthew, and I'm the game developer, and I'm from HitherYon Games. Thank you.
Joel?
Hi there, I'm Joel from the YouTube channel Planet Scooby.
So we're basically going to interview Matthew for this because we want to know more about the game because I got to play it, Joel got to play it. It's such a fun game, very Scooby inspired. You can definitely see that you're a Scooby fan for sure. So how long have you been a Scooby fan and how did you get interested in Scooby?
I was trying to remember what age it was that I first watched Scooby-Doo, and it was either kindergarten or it was before that. It was a very long time ago. I remember getting up really, really early in the morning and just loving the show, loving the mysteries and the creepy atmosphere and the ghosts, and just having this sense of wonder. In particular, I remember watching Strange Encounters of a Scooby Kind and be like, that's got to be a real ghost this time, that alien. How could anybody have a flying saucer and that kind of a body? And then they solve one of the cases and like, oh my God, it was really this person. I'm like, oh my God, they're so smart. How do they, I was a young kid at the time and I was just, wow, these detectives are so incredibly smart. I just had so much fun with the mystery and the suspense and the humor and the cool, just the incredible ghost, character designs and stuff too.
Were you able to usually solve the mystery and figure out who it was that was the masked villain?
When I was a little kid, I don't think I was. When I revisited the series, later in life, maybe somewhere around college, I watched it and went, oh well, there's only one or two suspects, or sometimes zero suspects. Sometimes you can't because it's like, oh, was this criminal that escaped that became the ghost? But the times where you can, I think most of the time, an adult can probably figure out who it is, especially when there's only one suspect or two suspects. You can usually have it, just by probability, make a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
Certainly, when I was older, it became more straightforward. But when I was a little kid, it was definitely wow. How do they do that?
Yeah.
That's a pretty deep cut too with Strange Encounters of the Scooby Kind. Like that's one from the Scrappy series too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that episode too. It was great.
Yeah, I just remember that one in particular, having that thought as a little kid.
Yeah. I don't even think I even saw that one as a kid. I saw it more as a grown up. So you're lucky to catch those too as a kid.
I was.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Scooby-Doo series or episodes?
I have a hard time knowing which series. Like I tend to like the older series with the original ones or the ones where they added Scrappy, and you can kind of tell from the animation how early or late one is. Some of my favorite episodes. That one, I'll just say, what the heck's going on is one of my favorites. Just the family curse thing that I kind of did in my own game was very much inspired by that one.
Cool.
Rocky Mountain Gee was one of my favorites. Had a bunch of different suspects. Had a bunch of different locations to explore. I liked that one just kind of for all the different detective elements to it. Creepy Heat from the Deep is one of my favorites. I thought that was kind of clever the way they did that, where the I guess I probably can spoil it for people if you haven't seen these episodes by now. First of all, you should, but I'm guessing if you're watching this show, you probably know at least as much about Scooby-Doo as I do or more. But just the whole setup where there's the ghost of the drowned sailor, and then it's really the drowned sailor. I thought that was very, very clever, very, very, very innovative. Those are probably my top four. There's others that I like. If I had to absolutely pick one, I'd have to sort between those and pick one out.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about the game Murder is Game Over, The Blackington Curse?
Sure. Well, Murder is Game Over, The Blackington Curse is the fourth game in a series of standalone murder mysteries that are all spooky, where you have a detective and a dog, and you solve murder mysteries with your dog. And you do so by exploring a crime scene, talking to suspects, finding clues, and then eventually figuring out who the culprit is and getting asked questions about the case and answering the questions correctly and bringing the culprit to justice. And it's as I said, it's the fourth entry in this series, and with that one particular, compared to kind of the earlier formula, I wanted to do more with exploration, where you have a bigger world to explore. I had written this kind of spooky ghost chase feature into the second game, and I kind of made it a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more kind of suspenseful the way it works. But you get chased around like a ghost, like in just like Shaggy and Scooby and the others do, where they're exploring somewhere looking for a clue, and the ghost appears at a door or whatever, and you get and ambushes them, and they've got to run away. You get that mechanic. And let's see what else is new with this game. And interestingly, with this game, it actually won an award, which is really cool. And I entered it as a submission in Boston Festival of Indie Games this past December, and it not only got into the festival, it actually won the award for best narrative design, which made me really proud because I had worked really hard to learn and improve as a writer over the course of this series. I've got a really good mentor. It made me feel really really good what I was doing in terms of coming up with interesting stories and narrative and storytelling and all that stuff. So that was a lot of fun, and just getting good comments about the moody pixel art and the creepy music and all that fun stuff. So if you like murder mysteries and you like Scooby-Doo, then hopefully it should be a lot of fun for you.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a great game for Scooby fans, and congratulations on the award because that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats on that award because I was really impressed with the storytelling and like I was hooked on that game. I had to pause. I was gonna sit down and play it all in one sitting, but I had to like pause and think and work out the clues and the
Yeah.
characters are great too.
Thank
Um,
you.
Yeah.
yeah, I just loved it. It was really good and I was just impressed with everything. Like everything about the game was just lightning in a bottle, it seemed like, because like it just you captured like you mentioned it before, like music, the artwork. Uh, it just also harkened back to so many past games, but it was its own thing. Like I just loved it when you switched to Cleo, like Cleo would bark. I just love that
Thank you. Yeah, kind
little
of a brief history of the series. I started developing games around 2020 during the pandemic, when is kind of, as somebody mentioned before we you jumped on being live, when everybody's kind of at their computer. It's a good time. You obviously can't really go out and be outside and be around people because it's there's a lot of health concerns, but it's a good time to be creative and make the most of the time isolated. So I decided to develop video games. Was something I wanted to try doing for many years, and I finally had the opportunity to do. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going anywhere for a while, so let's see how this goes. The first thing I did was I was using this game engine called RPG Maker, and the first game I made was just kind of your standard fantasy RPG game that everybody probably makes using the same software as a beginner. And there's some things I like about it looking back on The Sims, where I'm like, yeah, this isn't very polished. If I did this today, I could make this a lot more smooth and just a million times better or prettier or whatever. So the response was kind of that, where like, yeah, there's some good things, there's some stuff that could be better. And also it's a very popular game genre, and people are going to compare your game to studios making games with tens of millions of dollars, Final Fantasy, Baldur's Gate, Dragon Quest. And obviously what I'm doing in my spare time is not going to hold a candle to what a huge team of people is doing with millions of dollars. But when people write comments like, this isn't as good as my favorite fantasy game that has 500 hours of gameplay, like, there's just no way I can do that. There's no way I can that working by yourself, you can kind of do something like that as an apples to apples comparison. So then I thought, well, why don't I love murder mysteries, and I like why don't I make a murder mystery in kind of this kind of role playing game fashion, where you're exploring, and I can build these spooky crime scenes with secret passages and fun things. And instead of just being a fantasy hero and saving the world and fighting dragons, you're a detective and a dog, and you're solving crimes. So I had that idea. The other thing that happened kind of in between is that I made this really short like mini game where you're getting chased by a monster. It was like a you're in a maze. There's a monster somewhere chasing after you. You've got to find the maze exit before the monster tags you. So I had that idea, and then I made the first Murder is Game Over game, and it did surprisingly well. Definitely got a more favorable response than my first outing as a game developer did. And the point that really made me feel like, wow, I'm on something here, is I had somebody in France and then somebody in China that were like, I love your game so much that I did a translation into France for free for you. And I did a
Oh,
translation into Chinese where it's like, wow, my game has now been getting translated into other languages by fans. How cool is this? So that motivated me to make more. And I started thinking about, okay, what kind of features do I want to add in the next game to kind of build on top of what the foundation that I have. And the first time through it was kind of like, I don't even know if anybody's going to understand what this is. Nobody's really made a murder mystery RPG quite like this before with these mechanics. So I don't even know if anybody's going to get this to, okay, now there's, something that people are responding to. And one of the big features I wanted to do was the Scooby-Doo, there's a monster chasing you around thing. So like, all right, I've got these huge spooky environments you can explore. What do I do with this? I know, it just felt like a natural fit. Let's have a Scooby-Doo inspired, ghost monster to chase after you and disrupt the investigative gameplay. So I did that as a main feature for the second one, and that's kind of how the Scooby-Doo thing kind of became more baked into it after the first game. There's also in the second game there's a really cool you capture the ghost, and there's a long unmasking sequence just like Scooby. It's kind of like if you took the ending scene of every Scooby-Doo with you, I would have gotten away with it if he wasn't a few meddling kids, and you made it more a little bit more complicated. You made the ghost, feisty, where you take off his mask and says, "Oh, you don't stand a chance. I'm gonna call my lawyer and you get off scot free," and then you have to keep answering questions correctly and get them cornered. They just kind of took that idea of the unmasking the criminal in disguise, and yeah, I still enjoy playing it. You feel really good when you nail this guy because he's just really persistent and tough, and he feels like a good adversary. So the third one was kind of more on narrative, more on style. Then with the fourth one, I came back to, okay, I want to do the Scooby-Doo style chase again, and just make it more robust, and also make it optional because I found that some players just want to play detective. They don't like having us stop and chase them around. They just want to play a kind of a just have it be relaxing and not enjoy that. Some people think the horror elements are really cool, so I made it optional where you can choose to have it not get chased at all. You can have it be a light challenge. You can have it be, I call it scary mode because the ghost is more challenging to get away from, and there's a steeper penalty if you get tagged. So you can choose between any of those and change it any time to experience all of them. Pick whatever one suits your personal style. And that was probably the biggest innovation going into the most recent one.
and you mentioned you started programming in RPG. Was it?
I do have prior background as a web developer, but I was using RPG Maker, which also happens to run on JavaScript.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had some familiarity with what the code looks like, even if it's something like 25,000 lines of code in the engine. It's a really fun engine if you genuinely like making role playing games. It's a great tool if you're trying to make a first person shooter or some other genre of games. It's probably not the best tool for the job, but if you genuinely like RPG mechanics of exploration and talking to people and getting items and turn-based combat, like it has all you can go from and be up and running and start doing that stuff really quickly without having to do all kind of more programmatic stuff earlier on to set it up. So it's if you enjoy that kind of storytelling, it's really a fantastic platform.
And you mentioned too, you had a mentor for the storytelling aspect.
I do. Fortunately, one of my close friends is a professional game writer in Hollywood. And yeah, he lives in LA, lives in Hollywood. In recently he worked on Dungeons and Dragons. I don't want to name drop all his credentials, but he's worked on some really cool stuff, and he's just been an expert in that field for many years. And we've been friends and worked together in different ways for a number of years. And I had him kind of as my mentor, my consultant that helped me. Like he doesn't do any of the story writing for me, but I'll show him my ideas, and he'll kind of separate, okay, this is focus, or this needs work, or this is people aren't going to react to this the way you think they will. You should hear some feedback about what about this choice that you might want to consider, and then later looking at the dialogue and just helping smooth that out. And I feel like my writing has improved an enormous amount since I started, but I'm the student, he's the master for sure.
It's great that you have him to be able to help you with that and to make you feel a little bit more comfortable as well.
Yeah,
Plus, you're taking on a lot too, like
Yeah.
using two different sides of your brain, like the creative side and then the scientific side to
yeah,
do
the
all the
technical
programming.
side. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you're navigating all this because everything was just so polished.
Mhm.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
with the fourth game, it's had the benefit of having three games before it. So if you go back and play the first one, you'll see that it's pretty much all the same systems are there, and you play it the same way. But there are things that might be a little bit more rough around the edges that have since then been smoothed out just from getting player feedback and playing them myself and watching people play them in let's play videos and all that stuff. So it's a learning process, and it's kind of you get to fix your earlier mistakes by improving it in the next one, kind of, if that makes sense.
And we have like a younger audience and an older audience watching this, but for a younger audience getting into programming or video game programming, do you have any advice for them?
For aspiring game developers, excuse me, I do. And the best advice I can give, and this comes from over a decade of being around video game developers before I was one in different ways, and seeing kind of all spectrum from big studios and lots of money to people just starting and doing it on their shoestring budget, or paying out of pocket for whatever they're doing. And the big and that advice is make something that you can finish, because what happens a lot of the time is people say, oh, I want to, I love this 500-hour game, and I want to, for my first game, I want to go from having never done anything before to suddenly doing something of this outrageous, this incredible scope. And then they realize, oh yeah, I can't do that by myself after spending a lot of time working on it, and it just becomes hard to finish the project that you started. That's something I've seen over and over again, whether it's studios with venture capital, or lots and lots of mega bucks going into production, or people doing their first project, is that if you contain the scope of your project and do something that you can finish based on the resources you have, then you'll finish it. If you do something that is lofty and too big, then it's less likely that you will. That's so my advice is make the smallest game you can make that still gets you really excited, that you think is awesome.
It's great
Yeah.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to talk about the dog in the video game because it's important, you know?
We
Does
do.
the treat that Cleo gets at the end depend on how many doggy bags you collect in the game?
It does.
Yeah.
So I kind of modeled that idea after the really silly meals that Shaggy and Scooby eat, with the weird sandwiches and whatever they find. You know what I mean? So with the doggy bags, and part of it is I spent, when I was working on them, I had a publisher that was living in Quebec, and I have a lot of friends that were in Quebec. So when you get just kind of when you get more than zero doggy bags but less than all of them, you get some poutine, which is kind of silly for a dog to eat, but it works for a Scooby-Doo-esque treat. And if you get all the doggy bags, you get some really silly poutine that has to do with the theme of the game, like the last the third game that was set in Italy. You get gelato poutine, which that was kind of a stab at my old publisher, because his wife owned a gelato shop. So I said, oh well, I'll have gelato poutine as the doggy treat. Or there was one that was in. I guess I probably shouldn't spoil what is at the end of the fourth game, or should I?
I don't know. That's up to you.
All right, well, I'll just say the fourth game. There's this side quest where you have to find a dinosaur skeleton, and if you find the dinosaur skeleton and get all the doggy bags, then you get your dog bone poutine, and the dog bone may or may not be a dinosaur bone. And there's this one on the there's one in Boston where you get your Boston cream donut poutine. Like, it's all stuff. But my artist that draws this stuff is also in Toronto, like you. And every t- every time I have this poor woman draw, the end of the game, she goes, "Gross! This is disgusting." I mean, it's just so silly, obviously, but she kind of laughs about, she appreciates the humor, I guess.
It's definitely Scooby and Shaggy worthy because they would eat gross stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping on topic with Cleo, was Cleo based on a real dog?
Cleo is not based on a real dog. Cleo was when I started making the first game, I was hesitant to start spending lots and lots of money on custom art because I didn't know whether anybody was going to be interested in this at all. And one of the, you the, when you one of the resources for game developers now is you can buy, or I guess you could I say you can license that you can license art that somebody offers where it's like, okay, for a reasonable price, you're $10 or $20, here's this animated dog that you can use, but then if the next person wants to buy it, they can license it too. So I had this anime. I had a bunch of dogs, and I picked one, and it was strictly based on, okay, which dog looks the most like a crime, clue, which dog looks the most like a clue sniffing dog, and it wasn't based on a real dog. That's kind of how that came about. That would have been fun to do that at the time. It's just one of those things where I fell into it.
I was just wondering too, because doesn't really talk much, but has a great personality. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I was projecting or if it was just pulled out of the air, but yeah, no. Um,
Thank you.
for Cleo, did you have a specific breed in mind, or do you now maybe?
She looks kind of like a Doberman or a Rottweiler. I guess, like I said, there are a
Yeah,
bunch of there were I had a choice of like four different dogs, and I just picked the one that I thought looked the most detective-y, I guess, at the time.
right.
And that's how it came about. Which is a lame story, but it just shows that when you're doing something and bootstrapping at the beginning, you try to make the most of the resources you have, and that's what I did, and people enjoyed it.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to get you've done the impossible, like with this game. Like it is a great game. Like,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think it's a lame story at all. I think it's just how it worked out, you know?
And
Yeah.
she was a great choice because she definitely, to me, felt like a clue sniffing dog. She
Yeah.
belonged there, like with the detective, and they were a perfect match.
And I love the detail too. Like everyone would say something different if you had Cleo to try to talk to them.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going up to everyone with Cleo just to see what they'd say, and
Yeah.
it was fun.
I'm just curious where you came up with the name Cleo.
I had the word I was thinking of clue sniffing dog, and I had the word clue. I was like, what's a name that sounds like Clue? And then I had Cleo, and I came up with Cleo as a name that sounds like Clue. And I think at the time I knew somebody that had some other website called Cleo's something or other that was totally different, so that name was on my mind.
Hmm.
And then I was like, well, Cleo sounds like Clue, and that's where that name came from. One of the other really silly things about the game is that every game has a cat that you can interact with. Where if you're the detective and you pet the cat, is nice to you. It goes meow in this little heart. And if you're the dog, and the dog goes meow, and gets and runs away like the cats tend to do in Scooby-Doo most of the time.
Yeah. How did you decide on the game being a supernatural mystery?
Like I said, I've been a supernatural mystery fan for a long time. Like when I was a little kid, I just thought Scooby-Doo was amazing, and the supernatural mysteries in the show were amazing. Another one of my personal favorites from that genre that's actually referenced in a Scooby-Doo episode is Sherlock Holmes and the Hound of the Baskervilles. I'm
Mhm.
sure you know which episode I'm talking about from
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo. And I just remember reading that, and there were the footprints of a gigantic hound, dun dun dun, and then the spooky atmosphere of the Dartmoor, England, and all the fog and the tours and the mansions, all that stuff like that. So I've just been a fan of. I just to this day I'm was a fan of that genre for a long time and still am, and just wanted to take the appreciation I had for it from watching lots of movies and TV shows about it, like Scooby-Doo, and reading a lot of books about it, and just trying to do my own take on it because it's something that I always enjoyed.
I think we've touched upon a lot of the next question I'm about to ask, but we'll just maybe briefly summarize. So how did Scooby-Doo influence the game design and storytelling?
Gosh, I mean, certainly right from the very beginning, as soon as I had the idea of I want to have this detective and a dog that work in tandem as a tag team to solve mysteries, then we're thinking about Shaggy and Scooby.
Right.
So right from day one or close to that, like as soon as I had that idea, and that was very early on because I was like, I don't want to really write some. The detective's got to have some kind of a personality, but I don't really want to write some idiosyncratic detective character that I'm just not comfortable writing. And if I do this thing where there's a dog, that's kind of like having a detective have his own personality because the dog has a strong personality and making that work. So that came right from the very beginning, that whole idea of comparing them to Shaggy and Scooby. And I remember early on in the first game, I had some placeholder dialogue that had references to Shaggy and Scooby in it. So it was very very the day one or very early on was when that started. And then, like I said, after the first game, it expanded into the idea of let's have the ghost monsters that chase you around while you're solving the case. And I may have had that idea earlier, but I just didn't. There were so many other features I didn't want to start trying to do that when I was trying to get everything else to work for the first time. But in the second game, I was like, okay, I want to start working this in and have different variations on that. So I guess that answers your question, but it was certainly
Yeah.
very early on.
Yeah.
So, of all the franchises that are out there, why did you choose Scooby to model the game after?
I think it just came naturally without me saying one consciously saying I want to make a Scooby-Doo like game. Like I said, I made this. I had this RPG software that I was experienced using, and I wanted to make something that was small that I could finish because a lot of these fantasy games also tend to be just a crazy amount of hours long, and people that make them spend upwards of 5 years on a single game if you're working by yourself or with a small team. And then just being a huge murder mystery fan from watching and reading lots and lots of mysteries and lots of supernatural mysteries, that it felt like a natural choice. Did that answer your question? I'm trying to think if there's something that I left on the table.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you consider any other franchises to model the game before
Oh, that's a
settling?
good question. Yeah. The other big influence I think is Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. And I think the most iconic part of those games that we see in this is at the end of most of Agatha Christie's stories, you have a scene where all the suspects are gathered in the library or wherever, and he explains all the facts of the case, and at the end says who the killer is. So I had a scene like that, and the main difference I found is that when you're watching or reading Agatha Christie, it's fun to be surprised as the reader and be like, "Wow, I had all this information," and but the solution startled me because I didn't think about it. I was tricked, or I didn't think about it the right way, and you're astonished when most of the time you're astonished when you get to the end of a book. Whereas this is okay, you are the detective and you're the one explaining this. So I wanted the player to feel at least reasonably confident that they knew who the killer was going into that ending scene, because otherwise it's not, you're just guessing. It's not really fun, and players tend to enjoy more if like, oh, of course I guessed right because I'm smart and I knew it, rather than I just don't understand this and why is this happening, and that tends to be more frustrating. The ending scenes especially were modeled after Agatha Christie and Hercule Poirot. Additionally, like exploration mechanics, there's games like The Legend of Zelda where you explore a world and you find little treasure chests and secrets in different places, and that's the exploration is kind of like that. I wanted it to be secret passages and bonus items and stuff you can find if you explore every map fully. Another, I don't know if you played a lot of really old detective games. One of my favorites growing up was a series called Virtual Murders. It was a CD-ROM game with what's the genre called? You've got pre-recorded actors talking to you, and one of the things you could do in that game was speak to the suspects and ask them all questions and compare all their answers. So that idea was inspired by those that detective game series as a kid that I used to enjoy. Other video games, maybe Detective Grimoire. There's a really great Flash game early on that I thought is one of my favorites. The Ace Attorney series, if you're familiar with those. A lot of the detective games that before mine tend to be more about pointing and clicking than like than exploring maps and where the locations you find kind of factor into the plot and the solution of the mystery. So mine is different where there's more of those exploration mechanics, but a lot of the talk to people and find clues mechanics or have been done before in earlier detective games. Another it's been compared to Tintin if you're familiar with that. So it's comics and graphic novels and a TV show and a movie also because there's a detective and a dog probably the same way. So people have made those comparisons, and those are more like adventure stories, but there's some elements of detection in there as well. There's a Japanese mystery series that's really great called Kandaishi Case Files. It's also kind of I don't know if I'd call it a supernatural mystery, but it has elements of that where sometimes you have somebody dressed up as like a slasher or somebody. Yeah, I guess it's a supernatural mystery, but it's very similar where there's a lot of there's some suspects in an enclosed area. There's somebody that's has an alter ego where there's this monstrous killer, and you should find out who the detective has to find out who the killer is and explain the mystery at the end. So just I guess just a mix of Scooby-Doo plus other popular mystery and crime fiction, whether it's books or TVs or video games or other media.
Yeah. You can definitely see the influences in it. So you captured everything that you wanted or maybe didn't realize you were capturing very well in the
Thank
game.
you.
So you talked a little bit about them already, but can you tell us more about the other games in the series?
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do it in chronological order. The first game is, and then you can play these games in any order. It's not like watching a Marvel movie where you have to see the last one to understand what's coming next, or you're just going to be, lost in the woods. These you can definitely play them in any order by design. So if you're perusing a video game store and the most recent one looks more interesting to you than an earlier one or whatever, you can play them in any order. It's totally fine, and just go at your own, go with your own personal taste based on what you think looks fun. So the first game was just called Murder is Game Over, and I got that name because the murder victim in the first game was a game designer. I just thought, okay, I'm making this murder mystery series about this a video game. Why don't I have the murder victim be a video game designer? So then I was thinking, okay, what's a cool title for a murder mystery about a video game about a murder mystery about a video game designer? And I said, okay, I know, Murder is Game Over. Like I just imagine it like the episode of a Columbo or Agatha Christie or something like that would have a name like that. So that's how I got the name of the title. It takes place at a castle in Vermont. It's actually based on a real castle that I visited up there that you can visit too. That's this really incredible castle called Wilson Castle. The grounds are stunning. It definitely when you go there, you're definitely walking right into a Scooby-Doo episode. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of falling apart. There's these a lot of the this is just trivia I know from visiting there twice is the bricks that they made the castle with don't really hold up that well in the climate here, so the castle's always kind of falling apart and needed repair because of the type of material used to build it. It's got beautiful tapestries and furniture and art and stuff like that inside. And it's definitely super spooky. You can definitely feel there's definitely mediums that go there and see experience paranormal stuff. So the first one is based basically this murder mystery inspired by this real castle that I based the location on, where the victim is a game designer. There's no and the murder happens because in the beginning of the story there's the game designer is kind of wealthy and he and his wife moved to this small town where they're maybe resented for being rich and kind of elite and people around them just kind of struggling. So in the first scene of the story, a local woman says, go, why don't you go back to Manhattan? You don't belong here. There's the gargoyles on the castle want you to leave. Beware the gargoyles curse. And then sure enough, the murder victim is found dead. The gargoyle fell off the roof somehow and landed on him. So that's the beginning of the first one, and you find out what happened and who what happened and who killed him. So that's what the first game is about, and there's no ghost chase yet, like I said. But that's the original Murder is Game Over game. So the second game, as I said, and feel free to interrupt and ask if you have any other questions. Feel free to jump in. I was building on the success of the first one. I was trying to find. I was looking at areas that I knew I wanted to have that Scooby-Doo ghost chase mechanic, and I realized I needed to have like a rural location for it to do it because a ghost in the middle of Times Square is not going to last too long. I needed to have an area that had enough wide open spaces to be chased around, because if it's just a couple of small rooms like a locked room mystery, then there's not a whole lot of space for a ghost to chase, and I wanted to make the most of that feature. So I was looking at, ghost towns in Massachusetts, which is the state I live in, and I found out about this town, ironically called Dogtown, which is a Puritan era ghost town on Cape Ann in Massachusetts that was, like I said, it was a Puritan settlement that was abandoned after a number of years, and people believe that it was, there were superstitious things happening, either witches or strange things appearing there, and has all kinds of supernatural lore that from this real place. So I designed the second game based on kind of the region where this Dogtown settlement was, and just social issues going on at the time, going on, and thinking about why would somebody commit a murder and then have to dress up in a ghost costume and scare people. And I started thinking about possible answers with that kind of a setting. And that's kind of how I came out with the plot for the second game. And like I said, one of my absolute favorite parts of the series is the villain in the second game, and that scene where you capture the villain in a very Scooby-Doo like way, and then unmask the villain, where you asked a bunch of questions, and then finally you say finally you lift off the mask, and it's the killer is who it is, and they really just dig their heels in and put up really stiff resistance, and it feels really good when you outsmart the killer and bring them to justice, is one of my favorite parts in all the games. So that's the second game. With the third game, it became more of, okay, what haven't we done yet? What would be cool? This is when I was still working with that publisher from Quebec, and he had the idea of, okay, we've done some games kind of in the forest, in the woods, and in a small town. Let's do something with just a different, that just looks visually different. So we came up with the idea of having a game at like a small ski lodge, kind of like Rocky Mountain Ski. And this one happened to be in Italy because I visited Italy and went to a ski lodge. Yeah, the super isolated ski lodge in the mountains of Italy that was a lot like this. So it was kind of based on my experiences in being at a place like this in Italy, and just kind of the environment there, and doing some research on regional legends and ghost ideas. And that's kind of how I came up with the setting for the third one. And I brought back that the theme of having a mystery about a video game publisher. And one of the central kind of recurring themes is there's this greedy video game publisher that has a CEO that's just trying to make as much money for himself as possible, and cut quality and rip off his employees and do all kinds of underhanded things. And someone like that makes a great murder victim, because there's a lot of reasons for people to hate them, because they're greedy and they're a pain in the butt. So the murder victim was this video game publishing CEO, and it kind of tied back into the murder is game over title concept. And at one point I realized, okay, murder is game over is a catchy enough title, even though it's 4 words. I'm going to keep using this title because it's just so memorable. Nobody ever, people, you say it and people remember it. So that's how the third game was. The other thing that I did new in the third game is that there was this costume changing mechanic where you find this trove of costumes in the basement of the hotel, and there are 3 different costumes the detective can put on, and it's a lot like something Shaggy and Scooby would do, where they dress up, they're running away from the ghosts, and they put on a disguise, and suddenly they're barbers, and they welcome to the hair salon, and give the spooky ghost a makeover and a haircut, and you have this funny scene, then they run away. So it was a lot of it was based on the silly interactions from the disguises in Scooby-Doo, and the whole idea of, if the detective is wearing a disguise, these people are going to react to him in some other way and say something different. Maybe they'll reveal something that they wouldn't tell the detective because they're lying. But then you put on a disguise where you're dressed up as a ghost, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're a ghost! I got to tell you everything I know because you're going to haunt me if if I don't do that, or sometimes if they just say something like, "Why are you wearing a disguise? You're an idiot," So depending on what makes sense for the situation, there was this disguise mechanic, and it was ended up being a lot more work than I thought it was going to be because for every character that you have that you can talk to, you have to have dialogue for not just the main character but all three of the costumes and decide how they're going to react to each of these costumes or disguises, and that ended up being a surprising amount of work. But it's a feature that's in the third game that like I said, I try to keep adding something new to every game, so it's not just when you've played one, you've seen all there is to see.
It's a fun feature, though. It's just to have them dress up and then they interact with them differently. Because I think that was my favorite part of the game was them interacting. Whether you're playing as the Cleo or you're playing as the detective, and you're interacting with people, and they say something silly or whatever. I that was probably my favorite part of it. The
Oh,
dog
thank you.
probably was my favorite part.
Yeah, well, maybe I can bring back some other iteration of it. It was fun to do. Players certainly enjoyed it. It just ended up being a
Yeah.
surprising amount of writing and just like sanitizing because you have to make sure just debugging it took a lot of work to make sure that all the costumes functioned and it felt and just the immersion was consistent. So yeah, it was a cool mechanic. It was also surprisingly tricky to do. So I'm definitely open to bringing it back again. I just have to think about what to do with it and how to do it a little bit differently. And then the fourth game, this was again before I parted ways with the publisher I had. We were talking about the third game the costumes were cool. The story I think was showed a lot of growth from the first one and the second one. But it was also felt very linear, where you basically you're on rails and you basically have to do everything in one order and not deviate from it. So you get this one story that's a cool story, but if you're looking to go off the path and see, well, what happens if I do this first, it gives you a lot more to do. And also if somebody is streaming the game, then you can play the Blackington curse and go anywhere and do anything in whatever order you want. So if I watch you stream the game and then I want to play the game myself, it's not just doing exactly everything you did. So that was very important. And then I wanted to bring back the ghost chase feature and make it more optional because I saw with the second one that some players enjoyed it and others didn't. So I wanted to make that something that could be customized to a player's taste, and I wanted to make it more suspenseful so that you don't know where the ghost is going to be, you don't know when the ghost is going to appear, so it can surprise you every time. It's set to be at random location after random amounts of time, so it's going to be it's going to surprise you every time, and that was something that took a while to get right, and then just that the screen goes black and then it changes color, that extra suspense because of that. So that was new, and then every game has its own kind of unique treasure hunt as a side quest. So, and this one had the I don't know if you got that far, but the dinosaur, yeah, where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
follow dinosaur tracks, and at the end there's this dinosaur skeleton that this priceless dinosaur skeleton that you find that's it has something to do with the mystery. So that was new, and like I said, I guess the video game word is kind of open world design, where you can kind of do anything in whatever order you want, and the most recent game was kind of done to be more open world, where you have that tutorial area so you learn how to play and get your bearings, and after that you can go anywhere and do anything and just make your own way in the game. And I'm actually working on the fifth one now. I can talk about some of the new stuff with that later if you want, but that's also happening now. I can talk about what some of the new features might be, but it's still a work in progress now.
It is
Yeah.
our last question about, yeah, Joel.
Yeah. Our last question was, are you going to continue with the series or were you going to do a different genre at some point?
Sure. Well, I can't answer for at some point because I try to just think about everything in tunnel vision and just work on one project at a time and get it done. For the reasons I said, just you know, do something you can finish. but I'm working on the fifth game in the series now. And with this one, I was inspired by the fact that Scooby-Doo also has different regional settings and different games. Like A Menace in Venice, you go there and you have the Italy one with gondolas and canals and underground tunnels and all that kind of cool Venetian stuff. And I was inspired by the fact, and then you have these amazing regional ghosts sometimes that are inspired by where the story is, like the diabolical disc demon. It looks kind of like Kiss that's in this recording studio. And you have really cool original regionalized ghosts that I think is a great feature of Scooby-Doo that I also try to emulate. And I was thinking, okay, I'm a big fan of this particular Japanese mystery series that I mentioned, as well as some others. And why don't I go do the Japanese game now? I haven't been to Japan, but I used to go to some anime conventions when I was younger, and a lot of those anime conventions are in hotels, and sometimes you can go to see these big spooky city, high rise hotels. I thought that like an old high rise hotel in a big city, like an Art Deco kind of building, combined with the Japanese elements of an anime convention, these spooky Japanese monster legend, ghost legends, would be something fun to base a game around. And the new game that's in progress now is called Murder is Game Over, Murder Otaku, and it explores the Japanese influences are in there. I hadn't done anything in an urban environment before, but I've got a game that takes place in a city now, rather than like a small isolated rural area. So that's new, and I'm working on all the boilerplate stuff now, and then trying to figure out what other features I can add. But that's the work in progress now. And if you go on Steam or you go on my website, you can see a link to that and wishlist it, or check out the very early demo that I have and see more about what that story is about. So Murder is Game Over, Murder Otaku is the new one coming up, and I'm definitely committed to number 5 at least.
Cool.
Nice. That's great.
There's a
I
lot of,
like that
yeah.
you use real places to base the setting on, because I feel like more people can relate to something that's real. I've been to Vermont, I've been to Massachusetts. I've never been to Italy, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice that you can give people something to relate to.
Yeah, I do the best I can to travel to the locations that I'm trying to build something inspired by, and be like, okay, what do I feel like when I'm here, and how do I kind of make a map, like a 2D, RPG Maker top-down map that makes me feel like I'm in this area, and be as truthful about as I'm able to do with the tools I have.
Yeah, you definitely bring a sense of authenticity. Did I say that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Because when I was playing this game, it has nothing to do with this movie, but there's a movie called Thanksgiving, which takes place in Massachusetts. And I was like, this game kind of reminds me of this movie, even though, well, there's a killer in it, but it's just the weather patterns and just I don't know what you did, but everything just kind of,
Yeah, the garbage weather, yeah.
yeah, just remind me of that
Yeah,
movie.
is,
And
is
then
that
I
is
was
that
like,
movie is that I've heard of that movie. I haven't seen it. Is that worth watching?
yeah, it's worth watching. Yeah. If you like comedy horror,
Okay. All right. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
got a sense of humor to it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Blackened Curse, it's based on the Berkshires, which is kind of the westernmost vertical slice of Massachusetts. And there's all kinds of ghost legends from there. Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick based on a mountain that's there. Looking at this mountain, and you go there and you see it really looks like a giant whale. So it's easy to see what he was inspired by. H.P. Lovecraft, the fantasy author, has references to that area. There's all kinds of regional ghosts dating back to Native American times and colonial times, about stuff that happened. And I went to school, actually went to school for part of my time out there, and got to experience some of that stuff. It definitely felt like a spooky area to write about. There's mansions and stuff like that out there too. So it's inspired by a real place. And one of the really cool things with the new game is all the regional press that was out there just absolutely loved the game. Like it was in their regional newspaper, regional website, and even a magazine article about the game. It's definitely an area where they lend a lot of support to people in the arts that are doing something inspired by the area, and they definitely gave me a lot of love for doing what I was doing, and that was just a surprise and obviously really great to experience.
It's great that they're supporting the game. And I've seen a lot of people who have kind of seen the link between the game and Scooby-Doo, and their reviews have been really good. So
Yeah. Supposedly I'm the even though like I said there's been a bunch of movies and books and stuff based on this era. Supposedly I'm the first person that's ever made a video game based on the Berkshires, according to the newspaper writer who interviewed me, which is I had no idea, but there you go.
that's
That's
cool.
all.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us where people can buy the games?
Absolutely. Well, I have a link for Scooby fans from Scooby Addicts where you can buy the whole series at a discount price, and it's cheaper than it's a really good price. I'll put it that way. Wink, wink. It's a good price for Scooby-Doo fans. The game is available on Steam and GOG if you're a PC gamer, and if you're a console gamer, then the first three games are available on console. The fourth game is not available yet, but there are plans to do the console port. And the reason is that there's a publisher I work with that does the console port, and it's in their queue, but they haven't done that yet. Take some time to do all the tech, do all the paperwork for Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo. So that one's not on PC yet, but or excuse me, not on console yet, but it's coming there. So you can get it on through Scooby Addicts through my little promotion, and you can get it on Steam, GOG, or my website, which is murderousgameover.com, or your console of choice.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I post the link in the description of the video, and when I post everything on social media, I'll include the link as well.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want us to know about the games that we didn't cover?
I just hope that Scooby-Doo fans everywhere enjoy it. Everybody has their own opinions and takes on Scooby-Doo, and I'm sure that there are people that are going to find some things you have different opinions one way or the other with what I did, and that's fine. But I hope that everybody who plays it, sees something positive that is inspired by Scooby-Doo in the games, and just enjoys the game for the game, and enjoys the Scooby-Doo elements because they've been watching the show as long as I have or as long as you have, and just just want more.
I was hooked from the cemetery scene. Like,
Same.
yeah, I as soon as the guy in the mask appeared, I was just like, yep, this is exactly what I need right now.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Joel, anything else you want to say?
No, well, I had a question, but I just thought of it. Um, Lead detective's names. You just mentioned Quebec, so I'm now trying to figure out how to pronounce his name. If it's Guy or Guy.
I never it's actually Guy, but I don't say it in the story. I just at the time I was visiting Montreal and visiting my friends there and knew people named Guy and
Right?
thought that was kind of like a silly little joke of having the detect that having that be the detective's name, but it also just means like a
Yeah.
random dude bro that's the detective.
Yeah.
So you can interpret it as either he's a French Canadian named Guy or he's just some guy, and
Right.
it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But definitely has definitely came from my experiences being in Quebec and just kind of having fun with that.
That makes sense because, well, I saw the poutine. I'm like, I don't think this guy's Canadian. He seems more like he's. And then I saw the guy, and I'm like, oh yeah. But now it all makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm. I just thought it was the guy, but okay, interesting. All right. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for telling us more about the game. And for anybody that's listening or watching, be sure to check out the link, download the games. It's totally worth playing, totally Scoobified. You will see there's so many different aspects of Scooby that are implemented into the game, and it's great. And you should download it and play it.
thank you so much for that endorsement. That really means a lot. And just thank you for having me as a guest on this incredible podcast. I've seen some of your other shows and some of your other guests, and there are people that have just have these incredible legacies that I don't even hold a candle to. So for me, it's just an honor to be a part of what you're doing, and I just admire, you know, how good you are at what you do, and just how incredibly knowledgeable and passionate you are, and creative you are with the Scooby-Doo fandom.
Thank you. That means a lot. And we love doing this because we love talking about Scooby-Doo. So, and it's great to be able to talk to someone else who actually implemented, Scooby into something that they created. So thank you for doing that. And yeah, thank you for being here. This is great.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Tagus, Garrett Spencer, Paul the Scooby Dude, and Jesse. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to Joel from Planet Scooby and Matthew from HitherYon Games. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms or as a web series on YouTube. You can find Scooby Panel on Instagram, Facebook, and X as @ScoobyPanel. We are part of the Collector's Maze Network, where you can find all things geek. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport, Scooby Panel logo by Garrett Spencer, video editing by Nikki Blake, music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby panel.